Do you celebrate failure? By the end of this podcast, you're going to have 3 tips for how to celebrate failure better as a leader. I'm Jono White, founder and principal consultant of Clarity. We work with leaders around the world, and thank you so much for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. If you haven't done that, if you could do that now, that helps us to get the word out so more leaders can become the best they can be. So welcome to the leadership question of the day, and the question is, do you celebrate failure? Failure is in the way our society is set up, the way our culture is set up. We look at failure as a negative. We just, all of us in how we grow up, and failure is generally has a negative tinge. And the hard thing about this is that when you want to achieve something remarkable as a leader, as a person, it always involves failure upon failure upon failure. If you look at a baby trying to learn to walk, as cliched as it is, how many parents see the baby fall over and get angry at the baby? No, they celebrate the fact that the baby tried. And they know that if they keep trying, they're going to walk. And that's the approach we need to have as leaders. If you want to be really successful as a leader, if you want to innovate, if you want to disrupt, if you want to do things that no one's done before, if you want to see results that are great, that outperform 95% of everyone else in your industry or that you're doing, then you're going to need to learn to celebrate failure. Do you celebrate failure? The first tip I want to give you around celebrating failure is that you need to model it. You need to model it. When's the last time you failed at something? Have a think about that. How did you react? Particularly if you're in a leadership role and you're leading people, when's the last time you failed at something publicly in front of them, and how did you react? If we fail and we hide it, or we make a completely negative deal of it, then what we're doing is we're setting a culture where failure will not be celebrated. And the last thing leaders want to do, but it happens all the time, is they create a culture where people go, failure is unacceptable. And that's just not an innovative culture. If you want to have an innovative culture, you need to create a culture where people know that they can fail, and you need to take it to a point where people are even celebrated for trying things and failing. And people are very quick to going, but what if people keep failing? It's like, well, that's not normally the issue. When you have a celebrate failure mentality, and if you do a lot of the other things well in leadership, what will naturally happen is you'll stumble across something excellent, and then you'll go big on that. I don't think it's as big of a fear as we think it is around what happens if we end up just failing all the time and everything turns into a failure. You do want to have boundaries around it, but really most of us we're way at the other extreme. We need to get much better at celebrating failure. So the second tip for celebrating failure is to reward it. Okay, anything that what gets celebrated gets cultivated. So if you want to cultivate a culture of failure, then literally find ways to celebrate it. Call out the people who tried something new and it didn't work. Don't just call out the people who tried 10 times and now it's a big success. Call out that person who tried something new and it didn't work, and say, I just want to say thank you for that. That's exactly what we want. We want people stepping out and trying things. And you know what? It didn't work, and that's not just okay, that's awesome, because we have to do things that don't work. We have to celebrate failure if we're going to become everything we can be. And I love the story that comes from Dell, the computer company, where the owner was sort of had a right-hand man, a bit of a 2IC that he was raising up, and he was still quite young on his trajectory, and he made a big decision, invested, and it all turned south, and they lost $10 million, which at that time was a fortune. And he walked into the CEO's office, this guy who had made this call, and he was sure he was going to get the sack. He was like just ready to pack up and go and get a job somewhere else because he'd lost them $10 million. And the CEO said, basically he said to him, I'm ready, obviously you're going to let me go. And he said, no, why would I let you go? I've just spent $10 million training you. And I love that mentality. That's the celebrate failure mentality. It's to say, you know what, we all overestimate our ability to get things right and our gut feeling on things. And the truth is, we are going to have to try things and fail again and again if we're going to become the best that we can be as leaders. And we need to create a culture like the Dell CEO where we say, you know what, I want to celebrate the fact that this stuffed up, because this is how we grow as leaders, and we all need to do more of this and celebrate it, because this is how we are going to stumble on the ideas that are going to help us to grow and build upon our legacy for the next 10, 20, 50 years. So one more tip, the third tip for celebrating failure. And when it comes to celebrating failure, it's something that we always hear about as a culture, a celebrate failure culture. And so when it comes to culture, this is the third tip I want to give you, is you want this to be a bedrock of your culture. Make celebrate failure a culture, like a pillar of your culture. If there are already sort of a few phrases you use in your culture, there's 4 or 5 of them, then have a think about making celebrate failure a 6th or a 7th. Because when it comes to the culture of an organization, I can't think of many things that has a more dramatic influence than creating a celebrate failure culture. There's just something about that that's such a point of difference. It changes. It grows humility. It builds vulnerability, because admitting failure is part of vulnerability. So I would actually commit to it, and I would think about committing to it as a pillar of your culture. Next time you're doing a strategic plan, have a think about whether celebrate failure needs to be something that gets really embedded in your organization, because it has so many significant flow-on effects. Hey, if this has helped you to get clear in your leadership, then I want you to comment wherever you're watching or listening with the word clarity. Everything we do is about helping people to get clarity in their leadership. Thanks again for subscribing, following, liking, sharing. That really helps us to get the word out, to help more leaders to become the best they can be. So thank you for doing that. If you haven't had a chance to do that, then please do that now. And also check out consultclarity.org, and there should be a bunch of things in the description of this podcast or video, wherever you're watching this or listening. We have some scorecards. You can find out how you rate as a leader in less than 2 minutes, find out your leadership style in less than 10 minutes, and they're free. And there's lots of great things like that which I'd encourage you to do to grow as a leader. Thanks for watching or listening, and I'll catch you next time. Cheers.